guys, it's me, Beau, back once again on the Film Scene Investigation channel. Hope everyone is doing good. Today, I'm going to be talking about the 1997 Abel Ferrara movie, The Blackout. Now, I'll just say from the start, I really enjoyed this movie. As some of you are probably aware, when it comes to Abel Ferrara, I'm a huge fan. He's an incredible director, and I hold him in high regard. I've seen all of his films, and I'd have to say that The Blackout, for me, is one of the best he's ever produced. Before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. Your support is greatly appreciated. So, The Blackout from 1997 starred the actor Matthew Modine in the lead role. Now, I can't say that I've seen a huge amount of Modine's work. Of course, I'd seen him in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Rises and also Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. But yeah, besides that, I wasn't really too aware of the guy. So yeah, watching The Blackout for the first time, I wasn't really aware of what to expect from his performance. But no doubt, Modine was excellent playing the central character, Matty, a Hollywood actor in love with his French girlfriend, Annie, played by actress Beatrice Dalle. At the start of the film, Matty arrived in Miami, reconnecting with Annie and all of his friends. Matty was this high-flying, carefree actor, always looking for a good time. He had this lifestyle of excess and debauchery where nothing really mattered besides reaching the next high. In some ways, it kind of made you think, like, how was this guy like a working actor if he had all these like drug issues? And of course, it's worth mentioning that this substance abuse echoed Abel Ferrara's own life, as he was not only an addict, but I think still using at the time of production. Besides living the high life, we discovered that Matty and his girlfriend had relationship issues stemming from an abortion. Annie became pregnant but didn't want her child having a drug-dependent father. I mean, she knew that Matty was unreliable. She knew that she couldn't trust him to get clean, and so she aborted. The realization that he was partially responsible for the abortion deeply affected Matty. Through all of this, Matty was reminded of his drug habit and how that had ultimately plagued their relationship. Matty wanted marriage. He wanted to make a real go of it with Annie, but by that point, it was too late. The loss of the baby destroyed all hope of any long-term future between the two. Of course, Matty didn't react well to the news and just made things worse. Dennis Hopper's character, Mickey Wayne, a Miami filmmaker, then took it upon himself to help Matty get over his troubles. Mickey didn't want to see his friend wallowing alone, and Matty himself wanted to just forget the whole thing. So the two ended up having this wild night that involved drink, drugs, and some young women. It was clear that Matty at this point was completely lost, depressed, and running away from his true feelings. And things only got stranger the next day when Matty met a waitress, also called Annie, played by actress Sarah Lazet. Annie, this young, innocent woman, recognized Matty from his films, and the two began talking. It wasn't long before Matty took her back to Mickey's studio to have some fun. But when they arrived, things became even more strange when Mickey got involved. Mickey, the budding filmmaker that he was, decided to start filming Annie, getting her to try on all these different wigs to entice Matty. What began as this silly role-playing idea quickly turned serious when Matty saw Annie dressed up looking like his ex-girlfriend. Matty was not in the right frame of mind, yet his supposed friend, Mickey, was manipulating him in an attempt to conjure up this fake situation for the camera. The film then surprisingly cut to 1 year later, where we saw the now sober Matty in a new relationship, living in New York, but still ultimately yearning for Annie. Matty had counselling to try and understand the root of his problems, but he couldn't fully comprehend his feelings. What Matty needed was closure on the relationship. He needed some sort of final goodbye with Annie for him to be able to let go. He couldn't just leave things the way they were. For anyone who's been in love and then lost that person for whatever reason, that realization that they're gone can be a real knock to the heart. And yeah, I definitely understood where Matty was coming from. So Matty returned to Miami in the hope of finding Annie. He would reconnect with some friends, including Mickey, but he himself was very reluctant to get involved. And that led us to the big reveal that we got at the end of the movie. Mickey showed Matty the video footage he had filmed a year earlier. The video footage showed Matty in this drunken haze strangling the waitress Annie to death. Yeah, I remember seeing that for the first time, and I was pretty shocked. Matty had blacked out and committed murder, and Mickey had spontaneously recorded the whole thing on his camera. No wonder Mickey didn't want anything to do with Matty when he returned to Miami. All this time, over a year later, Mickey had this information, had this footage, and Matty was none the wiser. We then found out that Mickey took care of the girl's dead body because he didn't want any authorities snooping around his studio asking questions. Matty was in complete shock, and rightfully so. He was in disbelief about what he'd just seen on TV. I mean, he had experienced the ultimate blackout by literally killing someone in the process and never having any recollection of it. I mean, Matty was already emotionally broken from his breakup with Annie. He had returned to Miami, relapsed, and then discovered he was a murderer. I mean, the whole thing just completely tore the guy apart. Matty was distraught, and Mickey didn't help matters by kicking him out of his studio. He left, he was distraught, he was in tears, he was all over the place, and clearly was not thinking rationally. And so we saw Matty head to the beach, where he decided to take his own life. He had had enough. He was determined to exit from his life, and so he jumped into the sea, disappearing into the darkness. Yeah, it was a tragic moment, but brilliantly executed by director Abel Ferrara. A strong ending to a very haunting story about a guy losing everything he had due to his addiction. I have to give some credit to actor Matthew Modine for what he did here in this movie. At first his character was brash, he was cocky, but as the film progressed, we saw a different side to Matty. A troubled man with some real personal and complexing issues. Modine showcased a wide range of emotions where his character experienced the ultimate highs and the lowest of the lows. A scene in particular where Matty's alone in the apartment with the alcohol, waiting for Annie to show up. You really felt the character's anguish. He was down, he was depressed, he was in no fit state for any sort of reunion. And so he relapsed. He thought he could find a way out through the bottom of a whiskey bottle. Just brutally honest storytelling from the great Abel Ferrara. That temptation can be an absolute weight on someone's shoulders, and for some people it never goes away. On the whole, the Blackout featured a small cast of actors, and I thought everyone did a great job in their respective roles. I particularly liked the chemistry between Modine and Dale. Their relationship needed to feel authentic for the story to work, and it absolutely did. It was a passionate relationship, and it showed on screen. A couple that had experienced the best of highs and the worst of lows together. It made me think, taking a step back and looking at the overall story, both Annie and Matty were never really that compatible. They had experienced too much together, which ultimately handicapped their relationship. They both needed a fresh start. That lifestyle they were both living, just couldn't go on forever. And that was something that Matty never wanted to accept. When it comes to Dennis Hopper, I thought he was, a little over the top at times, but then again, he was famed for playing off-the-wall characters. And, let's be honest, the way the Mickey Wayne character was, it was believable that a guy like that would mix in those sordid, drug-fueled circles. There's no doubt about it. His character was definitely a snake, and overall a hindrance to Matty's life. A true friend would never instigate such a situation that saw a young, vulnerable woman killed. It was a solid performance from Hopper, and given how good Hopper was back in his heyday, I find it a shame that the actor never worked with Ferrara more often. This movie really connected with me more than any other Abel Ferrara film. The story hit me on a personal level, and at times, it was kind of hard to watch. I've also gone through that whole dark period post-breakup situation that we saw Matty go through. Sometimes it can take years for someone to come to terms with accepting their accountability for their mistakes. Ultimately, it's a learning process, and luckily, wounds do heal. There's no doubt that Abel Ferrara produced his best work during the 90s, starting with King of New York and ending with 1998's New Rose Hotel. While Abel Ferrara's 1996 film The Funeral is perhaps his greatest achievement, The Blackout is a strong contender and a brilliant entry in his filmography. Ferrara, who's more known for creating these urban street dramas, this time around was able to create a story that involved this jaded character seeking solace and redemption. The director captured the loneliness and the emptiness that addicts feel on a daily basis. I love the movie, it's one of his best, and I can't believe there's no special edition Blu-ray release of this movie. And so, dislikes for The Blackout, 1997. Now, there was nothing specifically that I found bad about the film. It wasn't perfect, but there was no glaring negatives that I noticed. So, when it comes to dislikes, I can only really nitpick rather than present a justifiable criticism for the film. The Blackout featured a raw portrayal of loss and addiction. It was very bleak at times, which in turn loses its rewatchability. I guess when I watch Abel Ferrara films, there is a sense of escapism for me, as in, I do know these worlds exist, but they don't affect me directly. But The Blackout, that story did affect me, and perhaps it was down to the film conjuring up some difficult memories from my past. So for me, I have to be in the right frame of mind whenever I want to watch this movie. It's a great watch, but it's not an easy one. And so, ratings for The Blackout 1997. I'm going to be rating this movie a strong 8 out of 10. This is a fantastic drama that I highly recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it yet. When people think of Abel Ferrara, they don't automatically think of this movie. And I do feel that this film has been unfairly disregarded over the years, whereas other Abel Ferrara films like The Driller Killer or Bad Lieutenant get more praise and recognition. I am not sure why. I don't know necessarily why, because for me, The Blackout was engaging and it featured an amazing ensemble cast. Some elements were kind of confusing, but no one can deny that this really was an intriguing story from start to finish. And as the years have gone on, The Blackout hasn't really obtained a cult following that I think it should do. It's a well-made movie, a really well-made movie, and it deserves more. People praise The Addiction, the 1995 movie from Abel Ferrara, and absolutely, another brilliant entry in his filmography. But I think with that, there is this romanticism with like the vampire element and all that. With this, it's kind of cut to the bone, it's in your face, and just remarkable filmmaking, and I'm just surprised that the film doesn't get talked about more. If you haven't seen it, guys, go see The Blackout, an obscure entry in the epic filmography of Abel Ferrara. And well, that's all from me today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed the review. I will be back next week with more. Please don't forget to subscribe, and take care.